If you only take action when you feel like it, you'll never achieve anything. This audiobook will rewire your mind for relentless discipline, destroy every excuse holding you back, and make consistency your default, starting now. Kill your excuses. Audiobook. Introduction. Right now, you're probably telling yourself this is just another self-help audiobook, another collection of feel-good platitudes and empty promises. You've been down this road before, bought the books, attended the seminars, watched the motivational videos. And yet, here you are, still stuck in the same patterns, still making the same excuses, still waiting for that magical moment when everything will finally click. But this time is different. Not because I have some revolutionary secret to share, but because you've finally reached the point where you're sick of your own bullshit. You're tired of watching others achieve what you know you're capable of. You're exhausted from the mental gymnastics of justifying why you can't start today, why you're not ready, why it's better to wait until conditions are perfect. The truth is brutal but simple. Your excuses, no matter how logical they sound, are killing your dreams one day at a time. That voice in your head that says, "I'll start Monday," or "I need to learn more first," or "I'm too busy right now." It's not protecting you. It's sabotaging you. It's keeping you small, safe, and stuck. This audiobook isn't going to coddle you or validate your reasons for holding back. Instead, it's going to show you exactly how to build the one quality that separates the dreamers from the doers. Relentless consistency. Not the kind that depends on motivation or perfect circumstances, but the kind that becomes as automatic as breathing. Chapter 1. Excuses are lies. You tell yourself. Every morning presents a battlefield in your mind. The moment consciousness creeps in, the excuses begin their assault. They come dressed as logic, as self-care, as reasonable thoughts. I deserve more rest. Just 5 more minutes. Today's not ideal. These aren't random thoughts. They're your brain's sophisticated defense mechanism against change, against potential discomfort, against the unknown. But here's what you need to understand. These thoughts aren't protecting you. They're imprisoning you. Every time you listen to that voice of hesitation, you're reinforcing neural pathways that make excuses your default response to challenge. You're literally training your brain to choose comfort over growth, mediocrity over excellence, safety over success. Take Elon Musk's journey with SpaceX. When he decided to enter the aerospace industry, the excuses available to him were endless and, on paper, entirely rational. He had no aerospace engineering degree. The industry was dominated by government contractors with decades of experience. The costs were astronomical, and failure meant losing everything. The voices of doubt weren't just in his head. They came from experts, investors, and the entire aerospace community. But Musk understood something fundamental. Excuses, no matter how logical, are still excuses. Instead of letting them dictate his actions, he turned them into a checklist of problems to solve. No aerospace knowledge? He bought and read every relevant textbook he could find. No experience? He hired the best engineers in the industry and immersed himself in their work. Too expensive? He invested nearly his entire fortune from PayPal. When the first 3 rocket launches failed, he didn't retreat into excuses about how space is just too hard or maybe this isn't meant to be. He analyzed the failures, refined the approach, and pushed forward until success was inevitable. But you don't need to be revolutionizing space travel to apply this principle. Let's take Jake, a construction worker who spent years convinced that starting his own business was impossible. His excuses were the same ones you might be using right now. I'm too tired after work. I don't have enough time. I don't know enough about business. What if I fail? These weren't just thoughts. They were comfortable lies that kept him stuck in a life he didn't want. The turning point came when he finally admitted to himself that Netflix wasn't a necessity, that being too tired was a choice, and that not having time really meant not making time. He started waking up at 5 a.m. instead of 7 a.m., used his lunch breaks to learn about business, and dedicated his weekends to building his dream instead of recovering from the week. The first few weeks were brutal. His body fought him. His mind created increasingly sophisticated excuses, but he made a pact with himself. No more justifications. No more debates. No more negotiations. When the alarm went off, he got up. When he had free time, he worked on his business. When he felt like quitting, he pushed through. Within a year, his side business was generating enough income to replace his full-time job. The difference between his years of stagnation and his eventual success wasn't some magical new strategy or sudden burst of talent. It was his willingness to stop believing his own excuses. This is where your transformation begins. From this moment forward, excuses are no longer an option. They're not part of your vocabulary, your thought process, or your decision-making framework. When you feel resistance, when your mind starts constructing elaborate justifications for inaction, recognize them for what they are. Lies designed to keep you comfortable and small. Your challenge starting right now. For the next 24 hours, catch yourself every time you make an excuse. Don't judge, don't analyze, just notice. Write them down. At the end of the day, look at your list. These are your personal prison bars. Tomorrow, we'll begin the work of breaking them, one by one. Chapter 2. The Real Reason. You can't stay consistent. You're staring at another fresh start, another Monday, another promise to yourself that this time will be different. But deep down, you know the pattern. The surge of motivation will fade, just like it always does. The real question isn't whether you can start. You've proven 1,000 times that you can start. The question is, why can't you keep going? The answer lies in a fundamental misunderstanding about how consistency works. You've been treating it like a daily choice, something that depends on how you feel when you wake up. But true consistency isn't a series of choices. It's the absence of choice. It's a standard you set once and then follow without question. Think about breathing. You don't wake up each morning and decide whether you'll breathe today. You don't need motivation to inhale and exhale. You don't negotiate with yourself about taking the next breath. It just happens, automatically, because it must. This is how consistency works for those who achieve extraordinary things. Observe Serena Williams. From the age of 4, she trained on cracked tennis courts in Compton, California. Her father would take her and Venus to practice before dawn, often in dangerous neighborhoods, through rain, through cold, through fatigue. There were days when young Serena didn't want to practice, days when her muscles ached, when other kids were playing, when the weather was miserable. But whether she felt like it or not wasn't part of the equation. This wasn't just about tennis practice. It was about building an unshakable foundation of consistency. By the time she reached professional status, Serena had logged tens of thousands of hours on the court. But more importantly, she had developed something far more valuable than technical skills. She had developed the ability to show up and perform regardless of circumstances. When she faced racism in predominantly white tournaments, she showed up. When she suffered injuries that would have ended most careers, she rehabilitated and returned. When she became a mother and faced life-threatening complications during childbirth, she fought her way back to the court. At an age when most players had long retired, she was still competing at the highest level. The secret wasn't motivation. Motivation is fickle and unreliable. The secret was that Serena had built consistency into her identity. It wasn't something she did. It was who she was. This is the fundamental shift you need to make. Most people approach consistency backward. They try to force themselves to be consistent until they become consistent. But this approach fails because it relies on willpower, which is a finite resource. The correct approach is to first decide who you are, to make consistency part of your identity, and then allow your actions to naturally align with that identity. Take Maria, a college student who struggled with procrastination. Like many, she had convinced herself that she worked better under pressure. This was a lie, of course, a comfortable excuse that justified her poor habits. Her grades were average, but more importantly, she was constantly stressed, always racing against deadlines, always feeling behind. The turning point came when she realized that working better under pressure wasn't a personality trait. It was a choice she was making. She didn't actually perform better under pressure. She had just trained herself to only work under pressure. The difference is crucial. Maria made a decision that changed everything. She would work for 30 minutes every day on her coursework, regardless of deadlines, regardless of how she felt, regardless of what else was happening. No negotiations, no exceptions. The first week was hard. Her brain, conditioned to procrastination, fought back with every excuse imaginable. You don't have any deadlines coming up. You're tired from practice. You deserve a break. You can do extra tomorrow. But Maria had made consistency part of her identity. She wasn't trying to be consistent. She was consistent. Just like she didn't negotiate about brushing her teeth or showing up to class, she didn't negotiate about her daily study time. It was non-negotiable because that's who she was now. The results were dramatic. Not only did her grades improve, but the constant background stress of looming deadlines disappeared. She found herself actually understanding the material instead of just cramming enough to pass tests. But the most significant change was in how she saw herself. She was no longer someone trying to become disciplined. She was someone who was disciplined. This is the technique I call locking in. Instead of leaving room for negotiation, you lock in your commitment at an identity level. You don't decide each day whether you'll do the work. You decide once who you are, and then you simply honor that identity through your actions. The process works like this. First, you make an identity-level decision. Not, I want to be more consistent, but I am consistent. Not, I'm trying to exercise more, but I am someone who exercises daily. This isn't positive thinking or affirmations. It's a fundamental decision about who you are. Second, you create non-negotiable standards that align with this identity. These aren't goals or intentions. They're rules. Just like you don't decide each morning whether to brush your teeth, you don't decide whether to follow through on your commitments. Third, you remove all wiggle room. No, I'll do it later. No, I'll make up for it tomorrow. No, just this once. The moment you allow for exceptions, you're back to making daily choices based on feelings. This is how you build consistency that lasts. Not through motivation, not through willpower, but through identity-level change that makes consistency your default state rather than something you have to force. Chapter 3. Embrace the pain you're avoiding. Every time you reach for your phone to escape a moment of boredom, every time you order delivery instead of cooking, every time you choose the easy path over the right one, you're making yourself weaker. This isn't about judgment. It's about understanding a crucial truth. Comfort is killing your potential. Society has engineered a world where discomfort is optional. With a few taps on your screen, you can avoid nearly every form of inconvenience or challenge. But this artificial comfort comes at a devastating cost. It erodes your capacity to handle real challenges. Like a muscle that atrophies from disuse, your ability to endure difficulty weakens every time you choose the easy way out. The relationship between comfort and growth is inversely proportional. The more comfortable you are, the less you grow. The less you grow, the more you settle for mediocrity. It's a vicious cycle that keeps you trapped in a life far below your potential. Take Malala Yousafzai's story. At age 11, when the Taliban began closing girls' schools in Pakistan's Swat Valley, she faced a choice: accept the comfortable path of compliance or risk everything for what she believed in. The comfortable choice would have been silence. Stay home. Stay safe. But Malala chose differently. She continued attending school in secret, writing about her experiences under a pseudonym for BBC Urdu. When most children would have been paralyzed by fear, she spoke out against the Taliban's oppression. She knew the risks. Death threats arrived at her home, her name appeared on kill lists, and still, she persisted. In 2012, a Taliban gunman boarded her school bus and shot her in the head. She survived, and instead of retreating into safety, she used this brutal attack as fuel for her mission. Today, she's a Nobel Peace Prize laureate and a global symbol of courage, not because she avoided discomfort, but because she embraced it as the price of change. While your daily challenges may not be life-threatening, the principle remains the same. Growth requires discomfort. Every time you back down from a challenge, you reinforce the pattern of surrender. Every time you push through discomfort, you build resilience. Take Lewis, a developer who spent years avoiding the gym. The mere thought of working out around others made him anxious. He tried home workouts, but without the pressure of public accountability, he always quit. His excuses were endless. He felt awkward. He didn't know proper form. He worried people would judge him. One day, after catching his reflection in a window, he realized something. His fear of discomfort was creating more pain than the discomfort itself. He was living in a prison of his own making, and comfort was the warden. Lewis made a decision. He would go to the gym every morning at 6 a.m., not despite feeling uncomfortable, but specifically to feel uncomfortable. He reframed the awkwardness and anxiety as signals of growth rather than warnings to retreat. The first week was brutal. His form was terrible. He felt like everyone was watching him. They weren't. He wanted to quit every single day, but he had made a fundamental shift in his relationship with discomfort. Instead of asking, "How can I avoid this pain?" he started asking, "What is this pain teaching me?" The awkwardness became a teacher. The burning in his muscles became proof of progress. The urge to quit became an opportunity to prove his commitment. 6 months later, Lewis had transformed not just his body, but his entire relationship with challenge. The gym was no longer a source of anxiety, but a temple of growth. More importantly, this new relationship with discomfort spilled over into every area of his life. He started speaking up in meetings, took on challenging projects at work, and even began dating after years of avoiding relationships. This is the secret that successful people understand. Comfort is not your friend. Every time you choose comfort over challenge, you're choosing stagnation over growth. The temporary relief of avoiding discomfort creates permanent barriers to your potential. Chapter 4. Motivation is a liar. You're riding high on motivation right now. The words in this audiobook have lit a fire inside you, and you feel invincible. You're convinced that this time will be different, that you'll finally follow through, that nothing can stop you. But we both know what's coming. Tomorrow, or maybe next week, that fire will dim. You'll wake up feeling heavy, uninspired, disconnected from that surge of determination you feel right now. And in that moment, you'll face the same choice you've faced 1,000 times before. Act despite how you feel, or wait for motivation to return. This is where everything falls apart for most people. They've built their entire strategy for success on the shaky foundation of emotional fuel. They wait to feel ready. They wait to feel inspired. They wait to find their passion. But here's the brutal truth. Motivation is a fair-weather friend who abandons you precisely when you need it most. Think about Stephen King's approach to writing. Since 1973, he has written at least 2,000 words every single day, including Christmas, his birthday, and even the day after his near-fatal accident in 1999. When asked about writer's block, King responded that the only way to overcome it is to write. He doesn't wait for inspiration. He sits down and writes whether he feels like it or not. This isn't just discipline. It's a fundamental understanding that feelings are irrelevant to performance. King has produced over 60 bestsellers not because he's more talented or more inspired than other writers, but because he shows up regardless of his emotional state. But you don't need to be a best-selling author to apply this principle. Look at Maya, a fitness coach in Denver who struggled with her own consistency. She had all the knowledge, all the equipment, and even a home gym. Yet she kept falling into the motivation trap. "I just don't feel like training today," she'd tell herself. "I'm not in the right headspace. I'll double up tomorrow when I have more energy." These seemed like reasonable thoughts in the moment. After all, shouldn't we listen to our bodies? Shouldn't we honor our feelings? But Maya noticed something crucial. Her most successful clients, the ones who actually transformed their bodies, never talked about motivation. They treated their workouts like brushing their teeth, non-negotiable, regardless of mood. This realization led Maya to experiment with a radical shift in mindset. Instead of waiting to feel motivated, she created a simple rule. If it's scheduled, it happens. No internal debate, no emotional check-in, no negotiation. Just like she wouldn't skip brushing her teeth because she wasn't feeling it, she wouldn't skip a workout because she wasn't motivated. The first few weeks were brutal. Her mind screamed for the old pattern of waiting until she felt energized. But something interesting happened around week 3. The internal resistance began to fade. Not because the workouts got easier, but because her brain stopped expecting motivation to be part of the equation. This is the key insight. Motivation isn't just unreliable, it's irrelevant. The more you rely on it, the weaker your consistency becomes. True power lies in divorcing your actions from your feelings entirely. Think about the most basic functions of your life. You don't wait for motivation to brush your teeth. You don't need inspiration to show up for work. You don't check your emotional state before feeding your kids or paying your bills. You do these things because they need to be done, period. This is the mindset shift you need to make with everything that matters to you. Your goals, your growth, your commitments. They're not optional activities waiting for emotional alignment. They're necessary functions of the person you're becoming. The science backs this up. Research in neuroplasticity shows that our brains build the strongest neural pathways through consistent, repeated action, not through sporadic bursts of motivated behavior. When you act consistently, regardless of feeling, you're literally rewiring your brain to make that behavior automatic. This is why people who rely on motivation fail while people who rely on systems succeed. Motivation is an emotion, and emotions are designed to fluctuate. They're terrible foundations for lasting change. Instead of trying to generate or maintain motivation, you need to build a system that makes action automatic. This means creating non-negotiable standards. Define exactly what you'll do and when you'll do it, without room for emotional override. Eliminating decision points. Don't give yourself the opportunity to check in with your feelings. The moment you open that door, you've already lost. Building identity-based habits. Instead of "I want to work out," shift to "I am someone who works out." Your identity drives your behavior far more powerfully than your motivation. Starting today, you no longer have permission to wait until you feel like it. If it's on your schedule, you do it. No debate, no negotiation, no emotional prerequisite. That's how you win. This isn't about being harsh with yourself. It's about being honest. Your feelings don't determine your actions. Your actions determine your results. The sooner you accept this, the sooner you'll break free from the motivation trap and start building real, sustainable consistency. The challenge is simple but profound. Pick one important action you've been waiting to feel motivated about. Write it down, schedule it for tomorrow, and commit to doing it regardless of how you feel. Not because you want to, not because you're inspired to, but because you said you would. That's the difference between someone who tries and someone who succeeds. Chapter 5. Identity is everything. You keep trying to change what you do without changing who you are. Every morning you wake up and attempt to force new behaviors onto an old identity, but your actions will always align with your self-image, which is why you keep falling back into familiar patterns. Think about the labels you've accepted about yourself. I'm not a morning person. I can't stick to anything. I'm just naturally disorganized. These aren't neutral observations. They're prison sentences you've written for yourself. Every time you repeat these statements, you're reinforcing neural pathways that make change nearly impossible. Your brain is designed to maintain consistency between your actions and your self-image. When you try to act in ways that conflict with who you believe you are, your subconscious mind will sabotage you every time. It's not about willpower or motivation. It's about identity alignment. Consider Kobe Bryant's approach to excellence. While many players practiced hard, Kobe's dedication went beyond mere behavior. He didn't just do the work of an elite athlete. He became one at his core. His famous Mamba mentality wasn't just a catchphrase. It was an identity he embodied completely. He would arrive at 4 a.m. for practice, not because he had to force himself, but because that's who he was. The first one in, the last one out. When other players were finishing their regular practice sessions, Kobe would still be on the court, making 800 shots before he'd allow himself to leave. He didn't see this as extraordinary effort. It was simply what someone of his identity did. This identity-first approach is what separated him from other talented players. While others tried to copy his work ethic, they couldn't sustain it because they were attempting to adopt his behaviors without first adopting his mindset. They were trying to act like Kobe without becoming Kobe. Nathan, an accountant in Boston, struggled with this same disconnect. For years, he tried to build a reading habit, setting ambitious goals of reading 30 minutes every day. He bought the books, set reminders on his phone, and created a cozy reading nook in his apartment. But month after month, the books gathered dust. The problem wasn't his strategy, it was his story. Whenever someone asked about books, he'd say, "I'm not really a reader." He saw reading as something he should do, not something that was part of who he was. This subtle distinction made all the difference. Everything changed when Nathan shifted his identity first. Instead of trying to force himself to read, he started introducing himself as someone who loved books. At first, it felt like a lie, but he committed to the identity shift completely. He joined a book club, started following literary accounts on social media, and engaged in conversations about books, even before he had read them. Gradually, something remarkable happened. Reading stopped feeling like a chore he had to force himself to do. It became a natural expression of who he was. When you identify as a reader, picking up a book isn't an act of discipline. It's an act of authenticity. This is the power of identity-based behavior change. When your actions align with your self-image, you don't need willpower. You don't need to force yourself. You simply do what people like you do. Think about how this applies to consistency and discipline. Right now, You're trying to force yourself to be disciplined while still identifying as someone who struggles with follow-through. You're attempting to build consistent habits while still seeing yourself as naturally inconsistent. It's like trying to push a boulder uphill. You might make progress through sheer force, but the moment you let up, you'll slide right back down. The solution isn't to push harder, it's to change the hill itself. When you shift your identity to someone who is naturally disciplined, consistent action becomes your default state. You don't have to force yourself to follow through because that's simply what someone like you does. This isn't about positive thinking or empty affirmations. It's about intentionally reconstructing your self-image to align with your desired outcomes. Start by paying attention to the stories you tell about yourself. Every time you say, "I'm not good at," or "I can't seem to," you're reinforcing an identity that keeps you stuck. Instead, begin declaring what you are, not what you want to be, not what you're trying to be, but what you are. I am disciplined. I am consistent. I am relentless. Your brain will resist at first, offering evidence of all the times you've been undisciplined. Ignore it. You're not describing your past. You're creating your future. Back this up with small actions that support your new identity. If you're disciplined, what would a disciplined person do right now? If you're consistent, how would a consistent person handle this situation? Let your new identity guide your choices. Remember, your old identity was built through years of repeated thoughts and actions. Your new identity will be built the same way. One decision, one action, one moment at a time. But it starts with a choice. Who are you going to be? Chapter 6. Burn your ships. Every time you start something new, you leave yourself a way out. It's subtle, almost unconscious, but it's there, lurking in the language you use and the commitments you make. I'll give it my best shot. Let's see how it goes. I'll try to stick with it. These aren't plans, they're escape routes, and as long as you keep these back doors open, you'll never achieve the consistency you crave. Your brain is masterful at finding the path of least resistance. When discomfort rises, when obstacles appear, when the initial excitement fades, it will always seek the easiest way out. That's why you need to make quitting more painful than pushing through. Think about how many times you've quietly abandoned your goals. The gym membership that went unused after January. The online course you never finished. The business idea you let fade away. Each time, you had a perfectly reasonable explanation for why it didn't work out. But the truth? You had given yourself permission to fail before you even started. Hernán Cortés understood this psychology of commitment when he landed in Veracruz in 1519. With just 600 men, he faced the daunting task of conquering the Aztec Empire. His men, naturally, were terrified. They had their ships waiting at the coast, an easy escape route back to Cuba. Cortés recognized that as long as retreat remained an option, his men would never fully commit to the mission ahead. So he made a decision that would echo through history. He burned the ships. Not just one or two, all of them. In that moment, he transformed the psychology of his entire army. Success was no longer a choice. It was the only option. This wasn't just a dramatic gesture. It was a profound understanding of human nature. When we have no way out, we find a way through. Take Emily, a marketing manager who spent years talking about starting her own agency. She had the skills, the connections, and the vision. What she didn't have was real commitment. She kept her comfortable job while planning her business on the side. Years passed and nothing changed. Then she did something that seemed crazy to everyone around her. She quit her job. Not after securing clients, not after building up savings. She quit with only 3 months of expenses in the bank. She knew herself well enough to recognize that as long as she had the safety net of a steady paycheck, she would never fully commit to her dream. The first month was terrifying. She had to learn to sell, to negotiate, to deliver results, all while watching her bank account shrink. But something remarkable happened. Her mind, finally freed from the possibility of retreat, found solutions she never would have discovered otherwise. She cold-called prospects she would have been too afraid to approach before. She worked 18-hour days without complaint. She figured out how to deliver high-quality work on impossible deadlines. Within 60 days, she had landed 3 major clients. By month 4, she was making more than her old salary. Today, her agency employs 12 people and serves clients across 3 continents. When asked what made the difference, her answer is always the same. I burned my ships. I made failure so terrifying that success became my only option. This is the power of eliminating escape routes. When you make commitment absolute, your mind stops wasting energy on what-ifs and starts focusing entirely on how-tos. Think about your current goals. Where have you built in subtle escape clauses? Maybe you're trying to get in shape instead of committing to specific, measurable outcomes. Perhaps you're seeing if you can write a book instead of setting non-negotiable daily word counts. These linguistic loopholes seem harmless, but they're sabotaging your success before you begin. Real commitment requires real consequences. If you want to write, prepay for a writing retreat 6 months from now. If you want to get in shape, book and pay for a photo shoot 3 months out. If you want to build a business, invest money you can't afford to lose. Create situations where backing out would cause more pain than pushing through. This isn't about being reckless. It's about understanding the psychology of human behavior. We will always choose comfort over growth unless we make comfort impossible. That's why people who publicly announce their goals are more likely to achieve them. That's why putting money on the line dramatically increases follow-through. That's why having an accountability partner who checks in daily leads to better results than trying to change alone. Your challenge today is simple but profound. Identify one major goal and burn your ships. Not metaphorically, take real, irreversible action that commits you to follow through. Book something you can't cancel. Pay for something you can't refund. Tell people you can't face if you quit. Make the cost of giving up so high that your brain has no choice but to find a way forward. Because when retreat becomes impossible, victory becomes inevitable. Remember, the path to consistency isn't about having more willpower. It's about having fewer options. Burn your ships and watch how quickly "I'll try" transforms into "I will." Chapter 7. Your feelings are irrelevant. You wake up to your alarm, exhausted. Your body feels like lead, your mind foggy with sleep. The warmth of your bed wraps around you like a cocoon, and that familiar voice in your head starts its daily negotiation. Just 5 more minutes. You're too tired. You'll make up for it tomorrow. This moment, this exact intersection between comfort and commitment, is where your future is decided. Because while you're lying there, debating with yourself, someone else is already lacing up their shoes. They're not more motivated. They don't feel better. They're just as tired, just as tempted to stay in bed. The only difference? They've learned that feelings are irrelevant to action. Your brain is designed to protect you from discomfort. It's an ancient survival mechanism that served our ancestors well when conserving energy meant staying alive. But in today's world, this same mechanism is sabotaging your success. Every time you wait to feel ready or feel motivated, you're letting an outdated operating system run your life. Angela Merkel, former Chancellor of Germany, demonstrated this principle throughout her 16-year leadership. During the 2008 financial crisis, the European refugee crisis, and countless other challenges, she never waited to feel ready before taking action. When asked about her decision-making process, she emphasized that leadership often requires acting against one's immediate emotional impulses. There were many mornings when she didn't feel like facing another crisis, many moments when the weight of responsibility felt overwhelming. But she understood that her feelings about a situation were irrelevant to what needed to be done. Her approach wasn't about suppressing emotions, it was about preventing them from becoming obstacles to necessary action. This is crucial because many people misunderstand what it means to act regardless of feelings. They think it requires becoming emotionless or pushing through with sheer willpower, but that's not it at all. Take Jordan, a writer who struggled with consistency for years. He had talent and ambition, but he only wrote when inspiration struck. Some days the words flowed easily, and he'd produce brilliant work. But these bursts of creativity were unpredictable and increasingly rare. He kept waiting for the right mood, the perfect moment, the elusive flow state that would make writing effortless. Then he hit rock bottom. After missing another deadline and losing a significant client, Jordan realized his approach was fundamentally flawed. He decided to try something radical, writing for 2 hours every morning, regardless of how he felt about it. The first week was excruciating. The words felt forced, the quality seemed poor, and every fiber of his being screamed to stop. But he kept going. He showed up at his desk at 6 a.m., whether he felt creative or not. He wrote, whether the words came easily or had to be dragged out one by one. Something remarkable happened around week 3. The resistance began to fade, not because it got easier, some days were still incredibly difficult, but because his feelings about the task became irrelevant to its execution. Within 6 months, Jordan had completed more work than in the previous 2 years combined. The quality of his writing actually improved because he was practicing consistently rather than waiting for sporadic bursts of inspiration. But the most profound change wasn't in his output. It was in his relationship with his own emotions. He learned that feelings are like weather. They change constantly and are largely outside our control. But just as you don't need the weather's permission to go to work, you don't need your feelings' permission to take action. This is the key to consistent execution, separating your actions from your emotions. It's not about ignoring how you feel or pushing through with brute force. It's about recognizing that feelings are irrelevant to the task at hand. Think about brushing your teeth. You don't wait until you feel inspired to do it. You don't negotiate with yourself about whether you're in the mood. You just do it because it needs to be done. This is the mentality you must develop toward everything that matters in your life. The next time you don't feel like working out, studying, or tackling that important project, remember, your feelings about the task are as irrelevant as your feelings about gravity. They might exist, but they don't change what needs to be done. Your challenge today is straightforward but profound. Choose one important task you've been avoiding because you don't feel like it. Then do it immediately. Not in 5 minutes, not after coffee, but right now. As you do it, notice your feelings but don't engage with them. Let them be there, like background noise, while you act anyway. This is how you build unstoppable consistency, not by waiting for the right feelings, but by making feelings irrelevant to action. Chapter 8. Stop negotiating with yourself. Every morning, in those crucial seconds between when your alarm rings and when you make your first decision of the day, your mind starts its familiar dance. Should I get up now or hit snooze? Maybe 5 more minutes won't hurt. I could still make it to the gym if I rush. This internal negotiation, this back-and-forth debate with yourself, is killing your potential. While you're lying there, weighing options, making deals with yourself, someone else has already made their decision. They're not debating, they're doing. The most dangerous conversations are the ones you have with yourself. Because let's be honest, you're an expert at self-persuasion. You know exactly which arguments will work, which rationalizations sound reasonable, which excuses feel justified. You've spent years perfecting the art of talking yourself out of discomfort. Jeff Bezos understood this principle when he made the decision to leave his secure, well-paying job on Wall Street to start Amazon. In 1994, the internet was still in its infancy, and e-commerce was virtually non-existent. The logical move would have been to stay put, keep collecting his substantial paycheck, and wait for a safer opportunity. But Bezos didn't negotiate with himself. He developed what he called the regret minimization framework, a simple decision-making process that eliminated the back-and-forth mental debate. Instead of asking himself endless questions about timing, risk, and readiness, he projected himself to age 80 and asked one simple question: would I regret not trying? The answer was clear, and once he made the decision, he didn't spend another moment second-guessing himself. He didn't wake up each morning wondering if he should keep going. He didn't debate whether to push through when things got hard. The decision was made. Everything after that was just execution. This is the key to unstoppable consistency, making decisions once and eliminating the option to renegotiate. Every time you open the door to debate, you create an opportunity for failure. Think about brushing your teeth. You don't wake up and think, should I brush my teeth today? Do I feel like it? Am I too tired? No, you just do it. It's non-negotiable. This is how every important action in your life should be treated. Consider Monica, a personal trainer in Seattle, who struggled with her own fitness routine. Despite being a professional in the field, she found herself having the same internal debates many of her clients faced. Some mornings, she'd wake up and start negotiating. Maybe I need more rest today. I had a late night. I could do it later. These seemingly innocent thoughts led to missed workouts, which led to guilt, which led to more negotiation. It was an endless cycle of hesitation and regret. Everything changed when she implemented what she calls the 5-4-3-2-1 rule. The moment she had a thought about whether to work out, she would count down from 5 and move before reaching 1. No discussion, no debate, no negotiation. Just action. Within 3 months, she hadn't missed a single workout. More importantly, she noticed this elimination of internal negotiation spreading to other areas of her life. When it was time to make cold calls for her business, she didn't debate, she dialed. When it was time to handle difficult conversations with clients, she didn't procrastinate, she scheduled them immediately. Her business doubled that year, not because she worked twice as hard, but because she stopped wasting energy on internal negotiations. Every minute you spend debating with yourself is a minute you could have spent taking action. This is why motivation fails you. It invites negotiation. When you rely on feeling motivated or ready, you're essentially asking your brain for permission to act. But your brain is designed for survival, not success. It will always choose comfort over growth, safety over risk, the known over the unknown. The solution isn't to get better at negotiating with yourself. The solution is to eliminate negotiation entirely. This means creating what I call decision-free zones in your life, areas where you've already determined the action you'll take, regardless of circumstances. Want to build a successful business? Make the decision once that you'll work on it for 2 hours every morning before anything else. No daily debate about whether you have time or if you should check email first. Want to get in shape? Decide once that you'll train 4 days a week and then remove all other options. Don't wake up and ask yourself if you feel like going to the gym. The decision was made yesterday, last week, last month. Today is just execution. This might sound extreme, but extremity is exactly what you need. Half measures lead to half results. When you leave room for negotiation, you leave room for failure. Think about it. Every great achievement in history was accomplished by people who stopped negotiating with themselves. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't wake up each morning and debate whether to continue the civil rights movement. Mother Teresa didn't question whether she should help the poor that day. They made their decisions once, and everything after that was simply following through. You must become equally decisive in your own life. Every time you catch yourself in negotiation, should I really make those calls today? Maybe I could start the diet tomorrow instead. Recognize that you're in danger. These seemingly innocent moments of debate are where dreams go to die. The next time you find yourself negotiating, remember, the decision has already been made. You decided when you set your goals. You decided when you committed to change. You decided when you started listening to this audiobook. Everything else is just noise. Your challenge today is to identify one area of your life where you constantly negotiate with yourself. It could be your morning routine, your work habits, your exercise schedule, anything where you frequently debate whether to follow through. Now, make one final decision about it. Write it down. Make it concrete. From this moment forward, it's non-negotiable. No more should I, just I will. Because every time you negotiate, you lose. And you've lost enough already. Chapter 9. Systems beat willpower. Every time. You're sitting at your desk, staring at your phone, knowing you should be working. Your willpower is engaged in an exhausting battle. Part of you wants to stay focused, while another part craves the dopamine hit of social media. This mental tug-of-war is draining your energy, and eventually willpower will lose. It always does. This is why you can't stay consistent. You've been relying on the wrong power source. Willpower is like a battery that drains throughout the day. Every decision, every temptation, every moment of resistance depletes it until there's nothing left. By evening, when you should be working on your side business or hitting the gym, your battery is dead. Barack Obama understood this principle deeply. During his presidency, he faced hundreds of critical decisions daily. He recognized that willpower was a finite resource, so he eliminated unnecessary choices. He wore only gray or blue suits, ate the same breakfast, and followed rigid routines. By removing these minor decisions, he preserved his mental energy for matters of national importance. This wasn't about discipline. It was about systems. Think about your morning routine. If you rely on willpower to get up early, you'll fail when you're tired or stressed. But if you place your alarm across the room, set your coffee maker on a timer, and lay out your workout clothes the night before, you've created a system that works regardless of how you feel. The most successful people don't have more willpower. They just understand that systems trump intentions every time. They design their environment to make good choices automatic and bad choices difficult. Observe Kevin, a coder in Portland who struggled with productivity. Every morning he'd sit down at his computer with the best intentions. Today will be different, he'd tell himself. Today I'll stay focused. But within an hour, he'd be checking his phone, scrolling through social media, or falling down YouTube rabbit holes. He tried using willpower. He tried positive self-talk. He tried setting goals. Nothing worked consistently. Then he discovered the power of systems. First, he created a focus fortress, a dedicated workspace where his phone stayed in another room. He installed website blockers that activated automatically during his work hours. He set up his computer to launch directly into his development environment when started, removing the temptation to check email first thing. The results were immediate. His productivity doubled, not because he suddenly developed iron willpower, but because he removed the need for willpower entirely. The system made the right choice, the easy choice. This is the key to unstoppable consistency. Stop relying on your unreliable self and start building systems that make success automatic. Think about brushing your teeth. You don't rely on willpower to maintain this habit. You have a system. The toothbrush is right there on your bathroom counter, visible every morning and night. The act is tied to specific locations and times. You don't debate whether to do it. The system handles the decision for you. Now imagine applying this same principle to every important area of your life. Want to work out consistently? Don't rely on motivation. Set up a system where your gym bag is packed the night before, your workout buddy is waiting for you at a specific time, and the route to the gym is on your way to work. Make skipping harder than showing up. Want to eat healthier? Don't trust your willpower at the grocery store. Create a system where you shop with a pre-made list, never go shopping hungry, and keep no junk food in your house. The system makes the decision before temptation has a chance to strike. Your challenge today is to identify one area where you've been relying on willpower and replace it with a system. Be specific. If you want to read more, don't just say, "I'll try to read before bed." Instead, create a system. Place a book on your pillow every morning. Set an alarm for reading time and put your phone in another room during that period. Because here's the truth. Willpower didn't build Rome, and it won't build your empire either. Systems will. Chapter 10. The Power of Small Wins. You're staring at your goals, feeling that familiar mix of excitement and dread. The voice in your head says, "This time will be different. This time I'll completely transform my life." You make grand plans. 2-hour workouts, a complete diet overhaul, writing 3 chapters a day. But deep down, you know what's coming. You've been here before. The enthusiasm lasts a few days, maybe a week. Then reality sets in. You miss one workout, skip one writing session, eat one forbidden meal, and suddenly your perfect plan crumbles. This cycle of ambition and failure isn't just frustrating, it's destroying your ability to build lasting change. You think the problem is lack of commitment, but you're wrong. The real issue, you're trying to sprint a marathon. Every time you attempt massive change, you're fighting against the fundamental way your brain works. Your mind doesn't care about your ambitious goals. It cares about survival, comfort, and maintaining homeostasis. When you try to force radical transformation, you trigger an internal resistance that's nearly impossible to overcome. Lionel Messi's journey to becoming one of the greatest footballers of all time wasn't built on dramatic transformations. Despite his natural talent, he faced significant challenges, including a growth hormone deficiency that could have ended his career before it began. But his path to greatness wasn't forged through revolutionary breakthroughs. It was built through thousands of small, consistent actions. Every day, young Messi would practice his ball control, not for hours at a time, but in short, focused bursts. He didn't try to master every aspect of the game simultaneously. Instead, he broke down complex skills into their smallest components. He would practice the same simple moves repeatedly, making microscopic improvements that were almost invisible to observers. These tiny adjustments in foot placement, body positioning, and ball touch accumulated over time, eventually creating the seemingly magical control that defines his play today. The lesson isn't just about sports, it's about how sustainable change actually happens. Your brain responds to small wins by releasing dopamine, creating a positive feedback loop that makes you want to continue. Each minor success builds confidence, creates momentum, and rewires your neural pathways for consistency. Think about how you learned to walk. You didn't just stand up one day and start running. You began with rolling over, then crawling, then pulling yourself up, then taking a single wobbly step. Each small victory laid the foundation for the next. Consider Olivia, a graphic designer in Seattle who dreamed of becoming a professional artist. For years, she told herself she needed perfect conditions to create: a dedicated studio space, expensive supplies, and hours of uninterrupted time. She would occasionally block out entire weekends for art, only to feel overwhelmed by the pressure and end up binge-watching Netflix instead. Her breakthrough came when she stopped trying to be Picasso overnight. Instead, she committed to just 10 minutes of sketching each morning while her coffee brewed. No pressure, no expectations. Just 10 minutes with a simple pencil and paper. The first few days, her sketches were basic, almost childlike. But something interesting happened. Some mornings, 10 minutes naturally stretched into 20. On weekends, she found herself reaching for her sketchbook instead of her phone. The tiny commitment had removed the mental barrier of not enough time and the pressure of creating masterpieces. Within 6 months, she had filled 3 sketchbooks. Her skills improved gradually but consistently. She started sharing her work on Instagram, gained a following, and began receiving commission requests. Today, she runs a successful art business, all because she understood the power of small wins. This is how real transformation happens. Not through dramatic overhauls, but through tiny, consistent actions that compound over time. The science behind this is clear. When you attempt massive change, you're fighting against your brain's homeostatic impulse, its desire to maintain current patterns. But small changes fly under your brain's threat detection radar. They don't trigger resistance because they don't feel threatening. This is why the most successful people focus on systems rather than goals. They understand that extraordinary results come from ordinary actions repeated consistently. Want to write a book? Don't commit to writing for 3 hours every day. Start with 100 words, about half a page. It seems ridiculously easy, but that's the point. You're not trying to write a masterpiece. You're building the habit of showing up. Want to get in shape? Forget about 2-hour gym sessions. Start with 5 push-ups every morning. Again, it seems too easy to matter, but that's precisely why it works. You're creating a foundation of consistency that you can build upon. The key is to make your initial action so small that it would feel ridiculous to skip it. This is what I call the can't fail threshold. If you can't do it, you've made it too big. Remember, every major achievement in history was built on the foundation of small, consistent actions. The Great Wall of China wasn't built in a day, or even a year. It was built brick by brick, day after day, over centuries. Chapter 11. Fall in love with the process. You're doing everything right. Showing up, pushing through, forcing yourself to stay consistent. But something feels off. Each task is a battle, each habit a burden. You're grinding your teeth through workouts, dragging yourself to the desk, treating every productive action like a punishment you must endure. And deep down, you know this won't last. Because no one can sustain something they hate forever. This is where most people get discipline completely wrong. They think it's about forcing themselves to do what they despise, wearing their misery like a badge of honor. No pain, no gain, right? Wrong. This mindset is exactly why you keep failing. Think about it. How long can you really maintain something that makes you miserable? How many times have you white-knuckled your way through a habit, only to abandon it the moment your willpower cracks? This isn't discipline. It's self-torture, and it's time for a completely different approach. Magnus Carlsen, the highest-rated chess player in history, provides a perfect example of what real mastery looks like. From the age of 5, Carlsen didn't just study chess, he immersed himself in it with genuine joy. Even now, as a grandmaster who has achieved every possible accolade in the game, He spends countless hours analyzing positions, exploring variations, and diving deeper into the complexities of chess. What's remarkable isn't the amount of time he dedicates to chess, it's how he approaches it. In interviews, Carlsen often speaks about the pure pleasure he finds in the game. He doesn't force himself to study. He has to force himself to stop. During tournaments, between crucial matches, you'll often find him playing casual blitz games for fun. This isn't just practice to him, it's play. This is the secret that separates those who achieve lasting success from those who burn out. The masters don't just endure their craft, they fall in love with it. They find joy in the minute details, excitement in the small improvements, pleasure in the daily practice. But here's what you're probably thinking. That's great for chess prodigies, but what about regular people? What about tasks that just aren't naturally enjoyable? Take Brandon, a coder in Portland who spent years hating his work. Every line of code felt like a chore, every debugging session a punishment. He was good at programming, but he dreaded it. His productivity suffered, his creativity stalled, and despite his technical skills, he kept getting passed over for promotions. The turning point came when he accidentally discovered coding challenges online. Instead of seeing each task as tedious work, he started approaching them as puzzles to be solved. He began competing with himself, tracking his solutions, celebrating when he found more elegant approaches. He created a point system for different types of problems, turning routine tasks into personal challenges. Something shifted. The same work that once drained him began to energize him. He started losing track of time while coding, not because he was forcing himself to focus, but because he was genuinely absorbed in the process. Within months, his performance skyrocketed. His solutions became more innovative, his code cleaner, his understanding deeper. A year later, he landed a position at a major tech company, not because he had forced himself to work harder, but because he had learned to love the work itself. This transformation isn't about tricking yourself or applying superficial motivation techniques. It's about fundamentally shifting how you view the process of improvement. The key is to stop treating discipline as a necessary evil and start approaching it as a game you can master. Think about children learning through play. They don't need to force themselves to practice walking, talking, or exploring their environment. They do it naturally because they're engaged in the process, fascinated by their own improvement, excited by each new capability they develop. You can recreate this same dynamic in any area of your life. Instead of dreading your workout, focus on the fascinating way your body adapts and strengthens. Rather than forcing yourself to write, explore the joy of crafting the perfect sentence. Don't just count calories. Become curious about nutrition and how different foods affect your energy and mood. This shift requires 3 key elements. First, you need to break free from the suffering equals success mindset. Pain is not a prerequisite for growth. While discomfort is often part of the process, it shouldn't be the primary experience. The most sustainable progress comes when you find genuine enjoyment in the journey. Second, you must become curious about the details. Masters don't just go through the motions, they explore the nuances. They find fascination in the small adjustments, the tiny improvements, the subtle variations that others overlook. This curiosity transforms mundane practice into engaging exploration. Third, you need to create feedback loops that make progress visible and exciting. Track your improvements, celebrate small wins, and find ways to make the process itself rewarding. When you can see your growth, even tiny steps forward become intrinsically motivating. The science behind this approach is clear. When you engage in activities you enjoy, your brain releases dopamine, which not only makes the experience pleasurable, but also enhances learning and skill acquisition. By finding genuine enjoyment in the process, you create a self-reinforcing cycle of improvement. This doesn't mean every moment will be fun or that you'll never face challenges, but it does mean that the overall journey becomes sustainable and fulfilling rather than a constant battle against yourself. Take your current goals. Instead of asking, "How can I force myself to do this?" ask, "How can I make this something I want to do?" If you're trying to build a meditation practice, explore different techniques until you find one that resonates. If you're working on business skills, turn learning into a game by creating challenges and rewards for yourself. Remember, the goal isn't to eliminate effort, it's to transform how you experience that effort. When you genuinely enjoy the process, consistency becomes natural. You no longer need to force yourself to show up because you want to be there. Your challenge for today: take one activity you currently dread and redesign it as a game or exploration. Don't just change the surface. Really think about how you can find genuine curiosity and enjoyment in the process. What aspects could be interesting if you approach them differently? How could you make the practice itself rewarding? Because here's the truth: the people who achieve lasting success aren't the ones who endure the most pain. They're the ones who figure out how to love the journey. Chapter 12. Stay consistent when life gets hard. You've been crushing it. Waking up early, hitting your workouts, staying focused on your goals. Then life happens. Maybe it's a family emergency, a work crisis, or just one of those weeks where everything seems to go wrong. Suddenly, your carefully built routines feel impossible to maintain. This is the moment where most people's discipline crumbles, and where you have the opportunity to prove you're different. The truth is, anyone can stay consistent when life is easy. Real discipline reveals itself in the chaos, in the moments when you have every legitimate reason to quit. These aren't just challenges, they're opportunities to prove what you're made of. Consider Oprah Winfrey's journey. In 1977, she was fired from her position as co-anchor at Baltimore's WJZ-TV. The station manager told her she was unfit for television news and demoted her to a lower-ranking position. She was dealing with workplace discrimination, personal trauma from her past, and the crushing weight of public failure. These weren't just excuses, they were real, significant obstacles. But instead of letting these challenges derail her, Oprah used them as fuel. While working her demoted position, she poured herself into developing her skills. She didn't just maintain her effort, she doubled down. She studied harder, prepared more thoroughly, and seized every opportunity to improve. Even when assigned to the lower-rated talk show, People Are Talking, she approached it with the same dedication she would have given a primetime slot. This wasn't just persistence, it was adaptive discipline. When one path closed, she found another. When traditional success seemed impossible, she redefined what success looked like. She kept showing up, kept learning, kept pushing forward, not because circumstances were ideal, but because she refused to let circumstances dictate her effort. This is the mindset that separates those who achieve lasting success from those who remain stuck in cycles of starting and stopping. It's not about maintaining perfect conditions. It's about maintaining momentum, no matter what. Take Alex, a single father in Detroit working 2 jobs to support his family. He had every legitimate reason to put his fitness goals on hold. Between his warehouse job during the day and driving for a delivery service at night, he barely had time to sleep, let alone work out. The gym membership he couldn't afford and the schedule that left no room for traditional exercise would have been perfect excuses to quit. But Alex understood something crucial. Adaptation beats perfection. Instead of giving up when he couldn't follow his ideal routine, he created new routines that fit his reality. He started doing push-ups during his delivery breaks. He turned his living room into a minimal workout space, using milk jugs filled with water as weights. When his kids were doing homework, he'd do bodyweight exercises right there beside them, turning it into a game they could join. Was it the perfect workout program? Number. But it was consistent, and that consistency, even at a reduced level, kept his momentum going. Over time, he found ways to expand these adaptive habits. He discovered a 24-hour gym that fit his unusual schedule. He learned to meal prep during the one free hour he had on Sundays. Each small adaptation built upon the last, creating a sustainable system that worked with his life instead of against it. This is the key to maintaining discipline through chaos. You must learn to bend without breaking. The moment you make consistency conditional on perfect circumstances is the moment you guarantee failure. Life will never be perfectly aligned with your goals. There will always be obstacles, emergencies, and valid reasons to stop. The solution isn't to ignore these challenges or to blindly push through them. It's to develop what I call resilient discipline, the ability to adapt your efforts to match your circumstances while maintaining forward momentum. This means understanding that discipline exists on a spectrum. On your best days, you might be able to give 100%. During challenging times, even 10% effort maintains the habit. The goal isn't to maintain peak performance during chaos. It's to maintain movement in the right direction. Think of it like keeping a car running in winter. Sometimes you need to let it idle just to keep the engine from freezing. That idle might not get you anywhere fast, but it prevents you from having to restart from a dead stop. This is why the all-or-nothing mindset is so dangerous. The person who drops their entire routine because they can't maintain their ideal schedule will always lose to the person who finds ways to do something, anything, to keep their momentum alive. Your challenge today is simple but powerful. Identify one key habit in your life and create 3 different versions of it. A full effort version for good days, a medium effort version for challenging times, and a minimal version for chaos. This isn't about planning to slack off. It's about ensuring you always have a way to maintain momentum, no matter what life throws at you. Because true discipline isn't about being perfect when conditions are ideal. It's about being consistent when they're not. Chapter 13. The only person you answer to is you. Every morning you wake up to a choice. Not about what to do. You already know what needs to be done. The choice is simpler and more profound. Will you hold yourself accountable, or will you let yourself off the hook? This moment, right now, determines everything that follows. You've spent years waiting for someone else to push you, to check on you, to make sure you're doing what you promised yourself you'd do. But here's the brutal truth. No one is coming. No one cares about your goals as much as you do. No one will force you to become the person you know you can be. The world is full of people who know what they should do, but don't do it. They have the knowledge, the resources, and the opportunity, but they lack the internal accountability to follow through. They're waiting for motivation, for the perfect moment, for someone else to light a fire under them. And while they wait, life passes them by. Think about Michael Jordan's approach to accountability. During the 1998 NBA Finals against the Utah Jazz, Jordan was battling a severe stomach virus, what became known as the flu game. He could barely stand up straight during timeouts. The team doctors advised him not to play. He had every legitimate excuse to sit out. But Jordan held himself to a different standard. Not just about showing up, about performing at his absolute peak, regardless of circumstances. He didn't need his coaches, teammates, or fans to push him. He pushed himself harder than anyone else could. The result? He played 44 minutes and scored 38 points, leading the Bulls to a crucial victory. What's remarkable isn't just that he played, It's that he demanded excellence from himself even when he had every reason not to. He wasn't accountable to the crowd, to his team, or to his legacy. He was accountable to his own unshakable standard. This level of self-imposed accountability isn't just for elite athletes. Look at Liam, a software developer who spent 3 years trying to launch his own business. Every attempt ended the same way, with excuses. The market wasn't ready. His partners weren't reliable. He didn't have enough capital. He was constantly looking for external factors to blame for his failures. Then one day, after another failed launch, Liam had a realization. No one was going to make this work except him. Not his mentors, not his business partners, not the market, just him. He started treating his business like Jordan treated basketball. Every detail, every decision, every outcome became his responsibility. He created a ruthless tracking system for his daily actions. Every morning, he wrote down his commitments for the day. Every evening, he reviewed what he actually did. No sugarcoating, no rationalizing, just raw honesty about whether he met his own standards or not. When he missed a target, he didn't look for excuses. Instead, he asked himself, if I were holding an employee to this standard, would I accept these reasons for not delivering? The answer was always no. This simple shift, treating himself as both the boss and the employee, eliminated his ability to rationalize failure. Within 6 months, his business was profitable. Not because the circumstances changed, but because he stopped waiting for them to change and started holding himself accountable for making things happen. This is the level of internal accountability you must develop. It's not about being perfect, it's about being honest. It's about setting standards so high and so personal that the thought of letting yourself down becomes more painful than the effort required to follow through. Start by understanding that accountability isn't about punishment, it's about growth. When you hold yourself accountable, you're not being harsh, you're being honest. You're acknowledging that you're capable of more and refusing to accept less from yourself. The key is to make your commitments concrete and your review process ruthless. Write down what you promise yourself you'll do, not vague intentions like, I'll try to work out more, but specific commitments. I will complete my workout at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Then, track your follow-through with absolute honesty. Create what I call an integrity report, a daily review of your promises to yourself. Did you do what you said you would do? Did you do it at the level you're capable of? If not, what stopped you? Not what excuse you told yourself, but what really stopped you. This level of self-examination feels uncomfortable at first. Good. Comfort is the enemy of growth. The moment you start feeling comfortable with your level of accountability is the moment you need to raise your standards. Remember, every time you let yourself off the hook, you train yourself to accept failure. Every time you hold yourself accountable, you build the habit of success. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest with yourself about your effort and your capabilities. Chapter 14. Kill your old self. Every morning you wake up as two people, who you are and who you could be. Right now, these two versions of yourself are at war. The stronger version, the one who executes without hesitation, who refuses to make excuses, who demands excellence, is being held back by a weaker version that you've allowed to survive for far too long. This weak version of you has mastered the art of self-sabotage. It whispers things like, I'm not ready yet, or maybe tomorrow, or I'm just not that type of person. It has created an entire identity around playing small, staying safe, and avoiding discomfort. And as long as you let this version of yourself live, you will never become who you're meant to be. Look at Malcolm X's transformation. Before becoming one of the most influential leaders in American history, he was Malcolm Little, a street hustler involved in drugs, gambling, and robbery. But in prison, he made a decision that would change everything. The old Malcolm had to die. He didn't just change his habits or learn new skills. He killed his entire former identity. He dropped his last name, considering it a slave name, and replaced it with X. This wasn't just symbolic. It was a complete psychological rebirth. The old Malcolm, with all his limitations and excuses, ceased to exist. In his place emerged a man of unshakable discipline, relentless focus, and unwavering purpose. Within a few years, he transformed from someone who could barely read into a voracious scholar who would study for 15 hours straight. From someone who lived for immediate gratification into someone who practiced strict self-discipline. From someone who ran from challenges into someone who faced them head-on. The key wasn't that he tried to be better. It's that he refused to remain who he was. He understood that transformation isn't about improvement. It's about rebirth. This same principle played out in Ryan's story, though on a different scale. For years he called himself an aspiring musician, wearing his amateur status like a shield. This identity protected him from real criticism, from real failure, from real expectations. After all, how could anyone expect too much from someone who was just learning? But this protective identity was also a prison. It gave him permission to practice inconsistently, to avoid difficult pieces, to skip performances when he felt nervous. It was comfortable, but it was killing his dreams. The turning point came when he realized that his aspiring musician identity was just an excuse to avoid going all in. One morning, he looked in the mirror and said, "The amateur dies today." He threw away all his old sheet music, the easy pieces he'd hide behind when things got tough. He deleted all his social media posts where he'd called himself an aspiring anything. From that day forward, he operated with a new identity. He was a professional musician who hadn't been discovered yet. This wasn't positive thinking or affirmations. It was a psychological execution. He started practicing for 6 hours daily, not because he felt motivated, but because that's what professionals do. He began seeking out the hardest pieces, the most challenging venues, the toughest critics, because professionals don't hide from challenges. Within 8 months, he landed his first paid symphony position. Not because he suddenly became more talented, but because he killed the version of himself that was holding him back. This is the level of psychological violence required for real transformation. You must be willing to execute the parts of yourself that keep you small. Your "I'm not a morning person" identity? It needs to die. Your "I'm bad with money" story? Kill it. Your "I'll start tomorrow" habit? Put it in the ground. This isn't about gradual improvement. It's about decisive elimination. Every morning, you must wake up ready to murder the excuses that have kept you comfortable and mediocre. You must be willing to feel the discomfort of becoming someone new. The process is simple but brutal. First, identify the weak identity that's holding you back. The one that makes excuses, that avoids responsibility, that chooses comfort over growth. Write it down in detail, all its habits, its typical excuses, its favorite ways to stay small. Then, create a funeral for this identity. Not metaphorically. Literally write an obituary for this version of yourself. Detail exactly why it needed to die and what it cost you by staying alive so long. Finally, step fully into your new identity. Not gradually, not partially, but completely. If you're killing your "I'll start tomorrow" self, then starting tomorrow is no longer an option. It's not even a consideration. That person is dead, and dead people don't make decisions. This might sound extreme, but anything less is just self-improvement theater. Real transformation requires real death. The death of your limiting identities, your comfortable excuses, your safe mediocrity. Your challenge today is simple, but profound. Choose one weak identity that's been holding you back. Write its obituary. Detail exactly why it needed to die and what it cost you by staying alive so long. Then burn it. Not metaphorically, actually write it down and set it on fire. Because from this moment forward, that version of you no longer exists. Chapter 15. Living the No Excuses Life. You've learned the tools, you've practiced the strategies, you've built the systems. But now comes the real test, turning all of this into who you are, not just what you do. Because there's a fundamental difference between someone who follows discipline and someone who embodies it. Think about where you are right now. You might be consistent with a few habits, maybe even achieving some goals. But are you living a truly no-excuses life? Or do you still negotiate with yourself? Still find clever justifications for taking the easy route when things get tough? Let's be brutally honest. Most people live in a constant state of compromise with their potential. They do what's required when it's convenient, push themselves when they feel motivated, and follow through when conditions are perfect. But that's not mastery. That's just sophisticated mediocrity. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson embodies what it means to live without excuses. His daily routine starts at 4 a.m., not because he needs to wake up that early, but because that's who he is. When filming back-to-back movies, he maintains his training schedule, sometimes working out at 2 a.m. before a 14-hour shoot. During the early days of his career, he would train after wrestling matches, often at midnight, despite physical exhaustion and injuries. But here's what makes him different. He doesn't view this as extraordinary effort. For him, it's simply normal. When asked about his insane schedule, he says, "I don't work 14-hour days because I have to. I do it because I want to." That's the difference between trying to be disciplined and embodying discipline. This isn't about motivation or even dedication, it's about identity. The Rock doesn't wake up and decide whether to train. He doesn't weigh the pros and cons of getting up at 4 a.m. He doesn't negotiate with himself about whether he's too tired. He simply executes because that's who he is. The same principle played out in Vanessa's journey, though on a different scale. As a schoolteacher, she had dreamed of running a marathon for years. She had all the usual excuses: long work hours, family commitments, not enough energy. But more than that, she had an identity problem. She saw herself as someone who wanted to be a runner, rather than actually being one. The shift happened when she stopped treating running as something she did, and started viewing it as something she was. She didn't just set a training schedule. She rewrote her entire self-image. Running in the rain wasn't a choice. It was simply what runners do. Training after an exhausting day of teaching wasn't heroic. It was just Thursday. Missing a session wasn't an option because that would mean betraying who she was, not just what she wanted to achieve. When race day came, she wasn't just prepared physically, she was unshakable mentally. The marathon wasn't about proving anything. It was simply the natural expression of who she had become. She crossed the finish line not because she pushed through the pain, but because stopping never entered her mind as an option. This is the level of identity integration you must achieve. It's not enough to know how to be disciplined. You must become discipline itself. This means eliminating the gap between what you know you should do and what you actually do. The process starts with understanding that every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. When you skip a workout, you're not just missing one session. You're voting for being someone who breaks promises to themselves. When you hit snooze, you're not just getting extra sleep. You're reinforcing an identity of someone who negotiates with their commitments. Conversely, every time you follow through, especially when it's hard, you're casting a vote for your new identity. Every time you do what needs to be done, regardless of how you feel, You strengthen your self-image as someone who executes without excuses. This identity-first approach changes everything. Instead of asking, "What should I do?" you start asking, "What would someone who never makes excuses do?" The answer becomes obvious, and action becomes automatic. But here's the key. This isn't about perfection. It's about consistency in your standards. Even The Rock has days where things don't go as planned. The difference is, he doesn't use those moments as excuses to lower his standards. He adapts, adjusts, and maintains his identity even when circumstances aren't ideal. This is where most people fail. They let one missed workout become a reason to skip the next one. They let one unproductive day become permission to slack off for a week. They let one moment of weakness destroy their entire identity as someone who follows through. Real identity-based discipline doesn't break under pressure. It gets stronger. Every obstacle becomes an opportunity to reinforce who you are. Every challenge becomes a chance to prove that your identity isn't just talk. It's who you are at your core. Your challenge today is to pick one commitment, something you've been putting off or negotiating with yourself about, and execute it immediately. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, not when conditions are perfect. Right now. But here's the twist. You're not doing it to achieve anything. You're doing it to reinforce who you are. You're doing it because that's what someone who lives a no-excuses life does. You're doing it because anything less would be out of alignment with your identity. This is how you lock in the no-excuses mindset permanently. Not through motivation, not through willpower, not even through systems, but through becoming someone who simply doesn't operate any other way. The time for half measures is over. The time for trying your best is done. From this moment forward, you are someone who executes without excuses. Period. Conclusion. You've reached the end of this audiobook, but let's be clear about something. This isn't an ending. It's a beginning. Everything you've learned, every strategy, every mindset shift, every uncomfortable truth has been preparation for what comes next, the rest of your life. The tools are in your hands. You understand that excuses are just comfortable lies. You know that motivation is unreliable and that systems trump willpower. You've learned how to force yourself into action, how to build unshakable consistency, and how to kill the version of yourself that keeps making excuses. But here's the brutal truth. None of that matters if you close this audiobook and return to your old patterns. Knowledge without action is just entertainment. You didn't listen to this audiobook to be entertained. You read it to transform. From this moment forward, you must become someone who does, not someone who plans to do. The version of you who made excuses, who broke promises to yourself, who waited for motivation, that person needs to die today. In their place stands someone unshakable, someone who doesn't negotiate with their goals, someone who simply executes. This isn't about trying to be disciplined anymore. You are discipline. It's not about forcing yourself to be consistent. You are consistency. This identity isn't something you need to earn. It's something you need to claim right now. Look at your life right now. What excuses have you been making? What goals have you been postponing? What changes have you been waiting to make? Those ends today, not tomorrow. Not when you feel ready. Not when conditions are perfect. Today. The knowledge you've gained is powerful, but only if you use it. Only if you transform it from theory into practice, from concepts into actions, from potential into results. You have everything you need. The only question that remains is, will you use it? Remember, this audiobook wasn't meant to motivate you. It was meant to transform you, to kill the part of you that accepts mediocrity, to awaken the part of you that demands excellence. You're not hearing these words to feel inspired. You're hearing them to become someone new. The tools are in your hands. The knowledge is in your mind. The only thing left is to prove, through action, that you're ready to become unstoppable. You no longer seek discipline. You are discipline. Now go prove it. Thank you for listening and for investing in yourself. I believe in you. Your potential is endless. Now go out there and create the life you deserve.